This episode is sponsored by the On With Origins podcast. Learn how credit union experts conquer today's toughest challenges while driving measurable results. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, Community Financial's President CEO Tansley Stern podcast, Despite Impossible. Now on to the show. Financial Brand Forum episodes brought to you by Nice Actimize, D. Hilton Associates, and Despite Impossible podcast. Hey everybody, Mike Lawson here with CUbroadcast. Welcome back to our continued coverage of the Financial Brand Forum here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And in the studio lounge, we have one of the coolest names I've come across. And I've come across a lot of cool names. And your name, sir, Vivek Jetley from EXL. Vivek, how are you, sir?
Very good, Mike. A pleasure seeing you.
Nice to see you and nice to meet you. Yeah, so before we get into, because you just got out of your session a little earlier this morning, but how is the conference going for you so far?
Very good. It's a very busy conference, tons of existing customers, lots of prospects, a lot of new people to meet with. So it's been fun so far.
Good.
And as I was telling you earlier, my session was busier than I expected it to be.
Good.
Standing room only. That's always a good sign to see.
I think so.
So a lot of interest in the topic.
It's a good way to start the day.
Yeah, it is.
No doubt. Well, let's get to your session because I want to learn more about, because this is a big topic right now. Harnessing the potential of generative AI in banking. Oh my gosh, we could be here for 2 hours.
It's a big one, yeah.
So, but give me a quick summary and maybe a couple of highlights that you want to share that you talked about.
So, what I did with my session was go at it from a practitioner's viewpoint of saying, look, it's been about 18 months, give or take, since ChatGPT came out, and since then, everyone's really just been talking about generative AI and saying, what can you do with it? What can't you do with it? Most of the large banks have gone into this massive investment cycle of just testing out use cases and going into what I think about is as proof of concepts overdrive. But when you come out of it, it's what did it result in? Did it actually generate the right kind of returns on investment? What's being driven at scale? What's being adopted across the board? What I focused my talk on was distilling the experience that we've had from 300 plus conversations with clients, about 50 odd use cases, and 30 live client implementations. Distilling that into saying, okay, what's working and what's not working.
Yeah.
And that really was something that I felt that the audience was really clued into, because there seems to be some amount of fatigue of saying, don't just tell me what's possible, tell me what's working.
Exactly.
And then tell me how and what should I expect out of it. And I think that's when I was very happy with the interactive nature of the conversation, got a lot of questions. And all of the questions were not about tell me what's interesting out there. It was
what's
about
possible.
Tell me how do I get it done?
Yeah, exactly. I think because last year we were in this big ChatGPT hype cycle, and we're still kind of there as well. But I think this year, based on what I've been seeing, we've come down to earth a little bit with it and seeing some more practical use cases. And I think this is kind of what you're explaining as well. Some practical stuff that we can use right now, and then of course you want to plan for the future with this. But it's a pretty hefty thing. Is this what you're seeing as well, the practical stuff?
Absolutely. So I think what's happened now is all of the banks, large and small ones, they're all focused on saying, tell me what I can use it for and what benefits do I derive out of it. Now, last year was the hype cycle where everyone was throwing out this trillions of dollars of value. I don't think the trillions have happened.
No,
but I haven't seen in my entire career, I haven't seen a technology that has this wide an applicability. So every bank needs it, and within every bank, every function has a use for it. So something that is that wide and that pervasive, I think is going to go a long way. The other thing that we've seen is that the capital investments that have gone into building out the data centers, building out the compute power, the amount of money that the hyperscalers have spent on it, I haven't seen the likes of that. When you've got all the CEOs of a Meta and of an Amazon and a Microsoft going out and saying we're spending billions of dollars each quarter in just building out the infrastructure. That just tells you that all of that investment is going to have to be monetized, and that's what's going to come through in the next few quarters.
Yeah, I just read a story. Actually, I'm going to go to my little news section here. I read a story this morning. I think it was JP Morgan to give AI training to all new employees.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows you where we're going with this right now.
Absolutely.
I think that's a brilliant move, actually, too. So,
and what JP Morgan's doing and what other banks are doing as well is they're now trying to create two groups of people. So there's the AI practitioners, the folks that are going to start building out these use cases, which is going to be a smaller group, focused on engineering, focused on business, focused on the technology.
Yeah.
But then there's a wider group of the AI users, and the AI users is going to be the entire rest of the bank. So now you're talking about banks that are a few 100,000 people, and you're going to have to teach all of them on saying, okay, here's how you can get the most out of AI in your day-to-day work. And that's going to be transformative in my mind.
Oh, completely. And talk about an enterprise-wide impact it's going to have on every department, for sure. So yeah. So what's the big takeaway from your session that you wanted people to take back to their bank or their credit union to go, maybe we should think about this?
So a couple of big takeaways.
Yeah.
One is, everyone focuses on, hey, what's the latest model out there, and this model can do this, and this other model can do that. And in our experience, it's not the model that defines what you get out of it. It's the bookends. And by the bookends, I mean, what are you doing with the data that goes into the model? Is your data really AI ready, so to speak? And then on the downstream side of it, once you've got the AI inside, how do you put that into your workflow so that it starts generating the right outcomes? And we feel that the solutioning and the use cases that have worked for customers are on those two ends of the bookends. So that's number one for us. It's the investment in the data and the investment in designing the workflow and understanding the workflow for the domain. The second part that's been very interesting is basically where companies or where banks have fallen out in terms of the use cases. So the large banks tend to do use cases that have focused on cost savings, on efficiencies.
Yeah.
The smaller players are actually pushing the boundary and saying, no, I need to use it for saying, how can I communicate with my customers more effectively? What can I do for personalizing messaging? What do I do for alerts and triggers? And that part's really fascinating because it's going to help them drive member growth, and it's going to help them drive member profitability. And that, I think, is going to be a massive differentiation. So we are seeing use cases across the spectrum on cost efficiency, on customer experience efficiency, but the stuff that's most exciting is that messaging, the personalized messaging for a member.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's nothing, pardon the double negative here, but there's nothing that this isn't going to touch.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Everything's going to be affected for sure. Last question for you. I want to give you guys a plug. How is EXL? How are you guys working with AI since you were leading up this session today? How are you guys working with banks and credit unions with AI?
So at EXL, we came into the AI revolution, so to speak, from a position of strength. We already had a very large practice that was focused on data and analytics. We had about 7,000 odd data scientists and engineers and analysts. So what we did was we leaned in and said we're going to invest, and AI became our largest investment. At this point, it's we've created our own solutioning lab. We've got teams of people working on it, building out the solutions, and we feel like we've been able to leverage that into quite the head start for ourselves in terms of all of the solutions. Now you're going to hear from some of our customers later on, but those use cases are, when I hear back from a customer saying you made this possible and we're doing something that is cutting edge for them, it's very gratifying to hear that.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Big rewards for sure. All that work paying off. All right, Vivek. Well, I'm going to let you get going because I know you're busy, and but thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it. Well done. Financial Brand Forum episodes brought to you by Nice Actimize, D. Hilton Associates, and Despite Impossible Podcast. Quick word from our sponsor, Community Financial's President CEO Tansley Stern's podcast, Despite Impossible. This episode is sponsored by the On With Origins podcast. Learn how credit union experts conquer today's toughest challenges while driving measurable results.